This is a walkthrough guide on how I set up my Roger Brothers luge, and also why I set it up like this. If you need any help at all, then please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to get back to you. One of the first things you need to decide is if you're going to run a 2, 3 or 4 truck setup. Increasing the number of trucks helps with grip, and depending on the track make cornering faster. I rarely use 2 trucks these days, apart from on very straight tracks like Top Speed Challenge. 4 trucks I'll use on tight, steep hairpins as I'm quite heavy, and I need that extra grip to throw it around the corners. 3 trucks is my usual go-to setup these days, as it increases grip on the front, and I just have to be more mindful when loading up the rear during cornering. On my luge I'm going to use the Ronin Pro Lights, with a 45° base plate and a 165mm hanger, along with some risers. I've got some 1/2 inch ones and I've also got some 8mm risers as well, along with some angled risers. These are to change kingpin angle. I'm going to wedge the front ones up to an extra 10 degrees and I'm going to de-wedge the rear one by a 5 degrees. I find that having the split angles makes handling a lot better, as having them symmetrical I tended to get them a little bit twitchy last year. One other thing, I always use solid wedges and risers now, as I found that the softer ones didn't always tighten down to the same height. We need to have all the wheels touching the ground, and the front 4 have to have the same pressure applied to them, so we don't have any of the wheels lifting off the ground during the cornering and losing grip. With the wedges and risers being held together with some bolts, check that all the kingpin nuts have been slackened off so that they are shown the same amount of thread. This is so that they're all at roughly the same height from the base plate. From wedging the trucks, this has given them a different ride height. Using a straight edge across the hangers of the 2 taller trucks will show how much extra height is needed on the de-wedged truck. To get the increase in height I'll use another thinner riser, but sometimes I need something in between the riser sizes, and I usually find that using a penny washer works great. The luge comes with a plate as standard to keep the back of your legs off the wheels, but I found that this plate is a little bit too small, and my wheels are still rubbing on the back of my leathers. So I use a plate off my old Len luge, but this still rubs, so what I end up having to do is put another riser in between the chassis and the plate, just to give it that extra little bit of clearance. You can also put another riser on underneath the trucks, so you've got a higher ground clearance, but that should keep it away from the plate. I try and get the trucks as close to my butt as possible, so I get the maximum amount of weight on them. And also the distance between each set of trucks, I try and keep that to a minimum, so I've got around about 5 to 10mm between each of the wheels. I use M5 high tensile steel bolts to bolt it all together. One thing you do have to be careful with is that because the Roger Brothers board is made in the States, is that everything that comes as standard is in freedom units, so you might end up needing 2 sets of tools to change bolts over. So I like to change everything over to metric because they're much easier and much more available to get in the UK. Having the 2 front trucks so close together does cause a problem getting the hangers on and off, but luckily there is a slight little workaround where you have to end up coming across to one of the cutouts in the Pro Lights to get it through. It takes quite a bit of practice and it's very easy to forget, so it's something I always try and keep on doing. The quickest and easiest way I found to change wheels over is to put the bearings on first with the spaces facing outwards. These are Tecton bearings, so they have the spaces and speed rings built in, and then after they're all on is I'll push the bearing onto the outside of the wheel first, flip it over and then push on the inner bearing. This makes it so there's a minimal amount of time that I have to touch it, and it makes it a lot quicker if I'm having to do this in between race heats as well. Now with all the trucks and wheels mounted, it's time to give it a test. What we need to do is sit on the board and try and spin the wheels to see if the front ones or if any of the other ones will spin. To do this, you're going to need a really smooth surface, and it's also got to be level and flat. So don't use anything that's springy, bouncy or uneven. To check that all wheels have even pressure on the ground, sit up and try and spin each pair of wheels. Try and do it when it's straight, but also lean from side to side and see if the outer wheel will lift up off the ground. This is why having such a smooth surface works best, as if the pressure is slightly different, you can spin them, and you can also feel how much resistance there is in the spin. There's always some flex in the chassis, and it varies from rider to rider. With this amount of slip, all it needs is a few washers on the front truck to even it out. Sometimes, and I don't recommend it, you can get away with tightening or loosening the kingpins on the front to vary the pressure. I only tend to do this if I can see I've got an uneven wear pattern. So if my front wheels are very worn and my second pair aren't, then obviously the weight distribution through the turns isn't quite right. So I'll just do that little tweak, but it's not something that you should be doing in an initial setup. And there you have it. That is how I set up my Roger Brothers luge. If you need any help at all, then please drop me a message or comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.